Hi, I'm Neha and welcome to my Teaching About Teaching video. My original plan for this teaching demonstration was to explain what germinal centers were specifically. In this plan, I simply introduced germinal centers in one sentence and directly delved into the mechanics and specific processes that it is responsible for. I provided no context to explain the importance of germinal centers and what role they exactly played in the immune system. When I was giving my initial presentation to my group members, they all verbalized their confusion and said they were not able to follow my teaching. In order to explain the importance of germinal centers, I began using examples of vaccines and started providing some background information on the pathway of the immune system before it reaches the germinal centers. I believe by using vaccines as the focal point of my teaching demonstration, I established a context that the audience was more familiar with in order to better explain germinal centers. In order to be able to explain such a complex topic, I believed it was necessary for me to delete very specific details that needed more extensive background in immunology to understand, such as terms like somatic hypermutation, class switching, etc., etc. For the final script, I chose to explain how vaccines strengthen the immune system, and germinal centers were just one specific part of that pathway. In order to explain purpose of vaccines, I aimed to utilize as many rhetorical questions as I could. The rhetorical questions allowed me to create a framework for the teaching demonstration and allowed the audience to feel engaged. By asking such rhetorical questions, I believe I was able to demonstrate what the big concepts and main takeaways were. For example, one of the questions I used was, what part of the immune system makes this army? This question allows the audience to understand that the upcoming information will focus on the pathway that prompts the immune system to defend itself. If I had not asked that question and delved directly into the information on how the army was created, then the audience might lose the big picture and focus too much on the little details. I also attempted to create a storyline to allow the audience to visualize this pathway by using terms like factory, light, and dark rooms to explain germinal centers and their components. However, I wish I had elaborated on this strategy more. For example, I wish I had described the plasma cells as army men and women that were able to shoot out antibodies like bullets, and memory cells as army tanks that contained blueprints and other information to create more of an impactful response. This would have helped the audience better visualize the difference between the two B cells created and understand how the immune system attacks the pathogens after a vaccine. In the teaching demo, I also strived to establish a connection with the audience by saying things like, before we answer this question, let's make sure we understand what the immune system does, or, so now let's talk about how the army is formed. This way, it seems as if I'm learning with the audience rather than teaching them. This allows the audience to understand how I think about the immune system, and then hopefully they begin incorporating the same thought process. At the end, I attempted to summarize all the information learned in order to reinforce it so that the audience has a clear main takeaway. In the initial teaching demonstration, I was talking very fast and seldom took breaks. For example, I was like, how does the vaccine work? Well, and have no break in between. But now I would want to change this to, how does this vaccine work? Take a longer break, look around the room, start making eye contact, and then answer the question. This allows the audience to ponder about the question and focus more on the information delivered. When I also take this short break, I will maintain eye contact with the audience to know that they're engaged before I begin answering the question. Another flaw that I noticed in my initial teaching demo was the fact that I used a monotonous tone and my body language was rigid. This can be very disengaging for the audience, and in order to improve this, I would take into account the balance between an authoritative voice and a more relatable one. For example, instead of saying, everyone knows it is extremely important to get a vaccine in order to protect yourself from any sort of infectious sickness or disease, such as the flu, but you might be wondering how the vaccine works, well, etc., etc., etc. I could really say, everyone knows it is extremely important to get a vaccine in order to protect yourself from any sort of infectious disease or sickness. But you may have been told that they just insert some random thing inside your body. But let me tell you the specifics, and then continue on with whatever I have to say. Here, I was able to use more of an upper status tone in order to showcase that I know the information and I'm here to share it. Then when I do begin explaining how the vaccine works, I will use a lower status tone so that the audience will be more engaged with the content. I also learned from our improv presentation in class the importance of communicating with your body. In my teaching demo, I would like to be less rigid and move my hands in a way where it signifies movement in the immunological pathway. For example, when I say T cells travel through the bloodstream to the spleen, I would use my hands like so. Lastly, I would like to incorporate more of a spiral way of teaching into my demonstration. For example, after every step of the pathway is complete, I want to be able to summarize and then continue on. I want this to be done in a more conversational tone, however, so it seems as if I'm checking up on the audience's understanding. If I look around and see confused faces, I will know that I should go back and restate the things that I said in a different manner so they understand better.